Do you consider yourself a gamer? What does that mean to you?
A gamer, to me, is someone who sees video games as one of their primary lifelong hobbies. Not just something they have a passing interest in or do occasionally, but something that really takes up a very significant amount of their free time, has for probably most of their life, and they cannot see themselves ever giving it up, at least not until old age takes away their reflexes, and they're very emotionally invested in it. Just like, essentially, almost everyone rides trains at some point, but that doesn't mean they're those kinds of hardcore rail fans who line up at the tracks to see a rare sort of train go by. And apparently that's a thing that people sometimes do.
What do you think the value is of having this somewhat more limited definition of gamer?
Well, I think it's important to differentiate serious hobbyists from, passing occasional customers. In large part because the serious hobbyists often know what they're talking about and have much more informed opinions. And I think that has value in terms of who the companies making the games listen to. I think it has value in terms of gaming communities having dedicated, passionate leadership who are willing to give the time and the energy to foster healthy hobbyist spaces. I think that it's about energy and passion and really caring about the hobby and having skin in the game. And people who care to that degree won't do things that they think are going to be bad for the hobby in the long term. You don't shit where you live.
Is the term gamer gendered to you?
No, not at all.
So you're perfectly fine with women being gamers and loving and engaging in this hobby as well?
Absolutely.
On August 28th, 2014, 10 competing publications, or technically 9 plus a blog. I'm still not sure how I should phrase that. We can go meta for a second, since this is not going to... This specific meta stuff I'm going to take out. But 9 publications plus a blog. I feel comfortable calling that 10 publications for the sake of ease of conversation. Do you think that's fair?
I think that's reasonable, and if necessary, there can be an asterisk with a more technical definition in the fine print somewhere.
Okay. All right. So on August 28th, 10... Oh, by the way, thank you. I appreciate the feedback on that.
No problem.
On August 28th, 2014, 10 competing publications all published articles on the same day calling for an end to the gamer identity. These 10 articles were followed by 9 additional articles on other mostly gaming sites over the next few days, also calling for an end to the gamer identity. How do these articles make you feel?
Very angry. I remember seeing that. That was before I was heavily involved with the movement, but I don't remember if it was covered in a Total Biscuit video or if someone in the comments section on his channel was talking about it, but I definitely heard about it through that. And I'd also recently seen the whole comment graveyard incident on r/games. And I really remember thinking, those fucking ingrates, if it weren't for gamers, they wouldn't have a job.
So you viewed this as an attack on gamers?
Yes. I mean, I don't see how it can reasonably be construed otherwise. I've heard arguments that, oh, they put gamers in scare quotes, and that makes it completely different. But I don't think that that would fly in any other context. If, if let's say, for the sake of argument, Donald Trump tweeted out that he hated, scare quotes, black people, would anybody say that that excuses him from being racist? Of course not.
Do you think that gamers and black people are comparable?
I mean, not in the sense that they're immutable identities, no. Gaming is a hobby, being a gamer is a choice. But in terms of the epistemology of, does putting scare quotes around a term for a group of people mean that you are not talking about that group of people generally? No, I don't think it's different. I think that epistemology remains the same regardless of what group designation is put in the scare quotes. I don't think that it is a normal parlance thing to say that scare quotes change the meaning of speech in that way.
I'm not sure you even need to use the scare quotes line because I think a lot of the articles didn't even use scare quotes.
It's just one of the defenses that I've heard commonly. But my point is, I don't see how a bunch of people can write stuff like gamers are dead or we need to end gamers, etc., and not have that viewed as an attack on gamers.
Why do you think these gaming sites all wrote articles declaring an end to the gamer identity at the same time?
I think it's probably not all one thing. It's probably two things. The first is collusion. That a lot of the people who were writing these articles were probably friends. They were probably in the same mailing lists, part of the same Slack channels, in the same group chats, etc., where they talked about the events that were going on. And at the time, the sort of pre-Gamergate stuff involving Zoe Quinn and Nathan Grayson and the r/games comments and all of that stuff. And they probably sat around talking about it and complaining about those evil sexist gamers and what have you, until somebody came up with the idea of, well, maybe it's time the gamer identity just went away. And pretty soon, several of them left whatever conversation this was with similar ideas for articles to write. Maybe coordinated in some more formal way, maybe not. But beyond that, especially with the later ones that came out the next day, I think there was also an element of what's called churnalism, wherein one journalist or one website essentially reports on another journalist or website's reporting. And first one covers a thing, then another covers that there's coverage of this thing, and then another covers reactions to the coverage, and so forth, and there's sort of this cross-inspiration. So I'm sure that a number of them were not actively involved in direct collusion, but simply read the articles and thought, I'm going to do something like that, because I want these delicious hate clicks too.
If the games press tried to reform, or even just ignored ethical questions instead of publishing the Gamers Are Dead articles, do you think that Gamergate still would have happened?
Probably not then. I think that that most likely that controversy and the conspiracy stuff, if ignored, would slowly have died down over a couple of weeks. But the way that the games press was going and the kinds of journalistic practices that were common, something was inevitably going to blow up. There was going to be some incident of this kind of unethical, often politically motivated behavior that happened and that really stuck, and the anger from it didn't go away. I think that within months to at most a couple of years of 2014, something like Gamergate was inevitable. But if it hadn't been for the Gamers Are Dead articles, it probably wouldn't have been that particular incident.
If the games press thought that there were some negative aspects to gaming culture, what do you think would have been a better and more nuanced way of criticizing that, rather than demonizing the gamer identity as a whole?
Well, ideally, maybe something like what we're doing right now, where people actually have conversation. Perhaps the games press could have asked gamers to nominate through some, democratic means on a subreddit a few people to act as spokesmen for the gaming identity, to sit down for interviews with these publications and discuss these nuances and both their concerns with the gaming hobby and our concerns with games journal. And rather than an attempt to nuke us from orbit, it could have been a conversation.
Would you have been open to hearing out the games press if instead of publishing 19 articles at once across competing websites, they instead wrote just one very thoughtful and nuanced article that talked about the negative aspects of gaming culture, while also recognizing the good aspects and not demonizing the gamer identity as a whole?
I was open to hearing them out as things were. I've spent years trying to foster dialogue, be it with some of these journalists, most of whom are very reticent to talk to anybody on our side, or with activists on the social justice side, despite their sometimes crappy behavior and broad generalizations. I remain open to discussion, and I'm willing to hear out pretty much anyone's perspective as long as they're willing to hear out mine in turn. Obviously, I would have felt better towards them had they been less vitriolic towards us. But even as things stand, I'm open to dialogue.
Why do you think the games press didn't go that route? Oh, did I go through?
Because they were mad. Because they were mad and scared. They felt threatened. They felt called out. They felt defensive. And they did what people in a relative position of power usually do when they feel like that there is a rabble at the gates with torches and pitchforks. They tried to make a show of force to scare the peasants back into submission.